so you're ready to be a real bodybuilder and compete. Let's see if that's a good idea. So you feel like it's time to be a real bodybuilder and compete. You've been debating about it, going back and forth in your head. Well, today I'm going to help you figure out the answer to that question. All right, so first of all, you need to figure out, why do you want to compete? This is sort of the big question to ask yourself. And you need to be realistic and give yourself the real answer. First of all, is it on your bucket list? If it's on your bucket list, that's a fantastic reason to compete. Plenty of people do it as a bucket list thing to just check off and do. But if it's on your bucket list, you got to ask yourself, how serious are you about winning, and how serious are you about competing, really? Because a lot of people go into this as a bucket list if they've lost a lot of weight, or if they've been in the gym for a few years. A lot of different reasons. A lot of people have a serious injury, can come back from an injury and go to the gym, and then they want to compete. If any of those things happen to you, and that's why you want to compete as a bucket list type of thing, just be honest with yourself if you have a real chance of winning. Because the biggest mistake you can make is deciding you want to compete as a bucket list item, which is awesome, but then going into it with sort of the motivation that if you lose, you're going to be disappointed. I don't necessarily think you should be going into it saying you want to win. You want to go into it, if it's your bucket list item, as something to prove to yourself. Don't worry about anybody else, because you could easily get disappointed in the outcome. Next, this is a big reason. This is sort of why I started to compete, and that's just for the fact I'm a competitive person in general. A lot of people are super competitive when they graduate high school or graduate college and they played sports or whatever it may be. They don't have an outlet for that competitive persona that they have, and that was me. So a lot of you guys, you're just competitive, and that's fine. If that's the reason, then you're going to go into this 110% and you're going to want to win. And if that is the reason you want to compete, that's awesome. And again, you need to be realistic with yourself about, are you going to win? Are you going to lose? What kind of goals do you need to have, short-term and long-term? Everyone needs to have that, no matter what your reason why is. Now, the next reason is you're ripped, might as well do it. I actually see this a lot more than you might think. People that don't even really follow bodybuilding, they get ripped, and then they're just like, hey, bodybuilding's a thing? Maybe I should compete. Why not, man? Go for it. Those are the people that usually get discouraged the least, because they're just doing it as like a, who cares? Let's see what happens. And then this one happens a lot, and this one actually almost makes me sad to a certain extent. And that's someone that just follows bodybuilding and they just want to see what it's all about. And that could be someone that's really out of shape and has only been in the gym a couple months, or someone that's been in the gym kind of lackluster, not giving 110% for a long time. Either way, it's someone that's just followed bodybuilding, but they've not really understood what it's all about to compete. And they just want to try it and see what it's all about. And the reason that makes me sad is a lot of times people follow bodybuilding on the social media world, but they don't dive into it more. And then once they dive into it, they get discouraged and they see some things that maybe they didn't know existed, and things that sort of discourage them from following bodybuilding further. They just get mad about it. And then the last one, which is, are you wanting to compete because you want to get famous on social media? Listen, if you're not famous prior to competing, chances are if you compete, you're still not going to be famous afterwards. It's not like you walk off stage and you're just famous out of nowhere. And I hate to tell you this, but no one wants to follow your journey as you compete. Maybe like what, 2 people actually want to follow? Like your buddies maybe want to follow, your family? I'm not trying to be a jerk, but no one really cares unless you're famous already. And if you were so jacked and so ripped and had such a great personality that then you wanted to compete, and people are like, whoa, they really want to see how it happens, see if you can do it. That's really the only reason. So don't think that you're going to go into a competition, win your class, win the overall, step off stage, and then boom, you have 50,000 followers on Instagram. It just doesn't happen that way. I'm sorry. Then the other thing you have to remember is, like, what is your why? The reason why you want to do it, one of these reasons, or something I don't have listed here, that's going to determine your commitment and your success. Because a lot of people, they have some of these whys on here that just really aren't that great, and then their commitment to wanting to compete just goes down the drain at some point. Because like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, sacrificing time to compete, that's a lot of time. And if you're not really committed, you're not going to succeed. I'm sorry. And then the last thing, I hear this all the time, and I've done this myself when I started, and that was saying, I can do it. Like, I can do it. Well, duh, anyone can do it. Anyone can compete. But the thing you have to say is you want it. Do you want to compete and not just compete on stage? Do you want everything leading up to that? Do you want to sacrifice the time? Do you want to diet every day? Do you want to diet 90% of the time? Just be realistic. Do you actually want to suffer? I mean, do you want to go through the actual pain and mental anguish of competing? Do you actually want that? Not can you do it? Yeah, maybe you can do it. Anyone can do it. I mean, really. But do you want it? Do you actually want to do it? That's the big question. And if you start saying you want to do it and you feel like you're lying to yourself, I don't think you should compete. There have been plenty of times where I've actually done this and I've said, I want to do it. And then in the back of my head, it's kind of like, do I really want to? And then I'll tell you what happens is the end of that prep, it's the worst prep of my life. I mean, you look like dog shit, period. But the times I've said I want it, and when I say it in my head, I know I really want it. Those are the best preps I've ever had and the best I've ever looked too. And I know I'm not that great of a bodybuilder. Frankly, I'm a terrible bodybuilder. But when I say I want it and I truly want it, that's one of the best versions of me that I can have. Now, this is the part that a lot of people, I guess, don't know that it happens until it happens, right? That's what will happen to you when you try to compete. You're going to get judged by literally everyone. The moment you start telling people you're going to compete and you're doing all of these things in order to do it, crazy diets, crazy workouts, crazy cardio, following some guru coach you barely even know, your family's going to judge you, your friends are going to judge you, people you don't even know are going to judge you, and you got to be prepared for that. And they're going to criticize you to your face and a lot behind your back. You will be, you think people, you know how much people are going to judge you and criticize you. I promise you, it will be more than what you expect. Always. It never fails. And then if you fail at your competition, or you say you're going to compete and then you don't compete, they're going to criticize you. I mean, it's like people are waiting for you to fail, and they will jump at the opportunity to criticize you. And boy, do they love it. They eat it up. Their eyes light up when they see you fail. And like, I've seen it with myself. I've seen it with other people. It makes me sick. But they're going to criticize you even if you succeed. Like, either way, you did something wrong. That was a stupid decision. Why did you compete? Oh, look at them now. They gained all the weight back. Oh, look at them. They only got first in the class. They didn't even win the overall. People have something to say. His abs don't even look that good. Like, what? People have, they're going to criticize you no matter what. So even if you succeed, just know that not only are you not going to blow up on social media as soon as you walk off stage, people are still going to criticize you. It happens every time. And then here's the obvious one that people almost aren't even realistic with. That's the fact that some of your health markers are definitely going to improve, which is awesome, but some health markers are not. When you really push yourself to a competition, and I mean really push yourself, some health markers are just not going to improve. They're actually going to get worse. And there's a number of them that I could go into, but you just need to be prepared that some of these things, especially hormone related, especially for a female, it's going to happen. The more you push yourself, the more your body's going to go into a hole. Now, you can definitely recover from it, and you have to take into account exposure time, not just exposure time to the drugs you may take or supplements, but the exposure time that you're pushing your body in a hole, right? Take that into account. You can either ignore it or you can face it right from day one. Might as well face it. And then here's the other thing this will happen 99.9% of the time. When you go to your first competition, you're probably gonna lose. I'm sorry. If you don't lose, then congrats, you're probably gonna be a pro someday. That's usually how it works. Even the people I know that are 10 times the bodybuilder I would ever be, they always lose at their first competition too. The people that I know personally that look freaking phenomenal in person, people that I might just see once a year, but when I see them, it's like, dude, you have the best genetics I've ever seen and you work your butt off. They lose. So do you really think you're that special that you're not going to lose your first competition? You're probably going to lose. And the quicker you come to terms with that and realize, yeah, I'm probably going to lose, but I'm still going to chase perfection. I'm still going to chase to try to succeed. I think you'll do okay. And then of course, I want to emphasize this even more because this is the one that is my pet peeve and bugs me the most. You are not going to blow up on social media the day after your competition. So stop thinking that that's going to happen. Everyone thinks that's going to happen at least once in their life. I've thought it. My friends have thought it. People I've coached have thought it. People I follow personally that, are doing great. They might have a couple thousand, 10,000 followers. After you're done with your competition, you're not going to gain 50,000 followers on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all this stuff. It's just not going to happen. So that should not be your why. This is sort of the big three things you got to drive home. 1, sacrificing time. I mean, how much are you willing to sacrifice? Because just think about it, the worst case scenario, how much cardio would you have to do? You might have to do an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours of cardio a day. Some cases at the end of a prep, I've heard people doing 2.5 hours of cardio a day. Should they have done that? Probably not, but they did it. They had to do it. Then you have to take into account the time you're going to sacrifice to make your food. And then here's one you don't think about is sacrifice the time to actually eat that food. Because I promise you, when it's time to prep for a competition, the food that you have to eat, you're not exactly downing it in 5 minutes. It might take you 30, 45 minutes to eat this crappy food. Even when you're starving to death, sometimes it feels like you don't even want to eat it. But you have to, man. You have to eat it, but you got to sacrifice the time to do it, which sucks. Then you have to account for the time you have to weight train. So cardio, weight train, make your food, eat your food. And then trust me when I say you're going to be finding yourself slumped over on chairs and counters trying to get a couple minutes rest throughout the day. So you're going to want to sleep more. So you got to take that into account. And then here's another one that's also sort of a huge pet peeve for me is people don't understand how much money you have to sacrifice. I wish it was free to compete. I really do. I wish it was super cheap, but it's not. How much can you afford? You got to figure out how much you can actually afford. Make a plan just like you would in real life. Make a financial plan for your competition and stick with it. Be realistic. You got to buy an NPC card. You have to hire a coach, whether it's a good coach or not. They might be cheap and they might be expensive. It could be anywhere from $100 to $500, a couple $1,000 if you really wanted to go crazy with it. Account for food, account for the drugs you may or may not take. And I'm not even talking about steroids. I'm talking about things like T3, T4, clenbuterol. I mean, there's a lot of drugs that aren't even steroids that you probably should be taking for a competition. It might even be health drugs, if you see where I'm going with that. And then of course there's supplements. Then you got to account for a hotel. You got to account for a suit that you have to buy. You have to account for your tan. You have to account for blood work that you should be getting at least twice per competition, in my opinion, at least twice. Then another one other people forget about, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but time away from other revenue streams. If I'm sacrificing all of this extra time for a competition, because if I'm not in a competition prep, I might be sacrificing 90 minutes a day to really train. Competition time, it's 90 minutes minimum. Sometimes, like I said, it could be up to 3 hours a day. And those extra hour or two that I'm putting towards a competition, I could be putting towards other revenue streams. Like I have a full-time job, but I have multiple other revenue streams that need time for them to actually bring in revenue. So if I'm doing this stuff, I'm not getting that money. So not only am I losing money from not making money, I'm losing money putting it into this competition. So it's like so much money. So I mean, right there, NPC card, that's like, I think it's $125 now. Coach will say $200, $300 for 3 months. So that's about $425. Food, whatever, drugs, couple $100 on drugs. So we'll say $625. Supplements, another couple $100. You're up to $825. Hotel, $200 minimum. It's gonna be more than that. So that's right over $1,000. A suit for guys, $50, $100. Girls, it's gonna be several $100. So we'll say $1,200 right there. Tan, that's another $150. So you're up to $1,350. Blood work twice, I would say $220, $250. So now we're up into the $1,500 range. Time away from other revenue. For me, that's a lot. For some of you guys, I don't know. So I mean, minimum $1,500 to do a competition, minimum, and that's not accounting for food and other things that come into account for that, like gym memberships, gas, things like that. So yeah, do you have $1,500? Are you going to be able to have $1,500 to spread out over 3 or 4 months? If you can't, then don't do it. If you can't afford that stuff, don't do it. Because if there's one of these things that you can't afford, I mean, you literally have to have an NPC card. You have to have a hotel. Well, you just don't have to have a hotel. You have to have a suit. You have to have a tan. So, I mean, I guess those are the 3 things you have to have. But if you can't afford that stuff, then you're half-assing it straight up. Like, you can say on Instagram that you're giving 110%, but if you don't have the money to pay for some of this stuff, then you're freaking lying. You're not giving 110%. You're just full of crap, period. I'm sorry. Then of course, the last thing is the one that everyone likes to talk about, and that's drugs. You really need to understand the pros and cons of it. And I mean the real pros of the drugs, not the fantasy land pros where you take a drug and then you just turn into a pro. That's not a real pro. That's not going to happen. So you need to understand the real pros of taking some of these drugs and the real cons of taking some of these drugs, because they're going to have impacts that could or could not happen on your health. Then of course you need to think about, once the competition's over, what you have to take. So there's other things than just the fun stuff, the stuff that puts on muscle or holds muscle or burns fat or helps you burn fat, all this stuff. There's all these other things you have to take into account that could or could not happen. And then after the competition's over, after this competition high, there's things you're going to have to take. And most people don't do it. And those are people that look like water buffaloes after the competition and get mad at their coach, saying their coach coached them wrong. But really, they just didn't want to sacrifice the money to get the drugs they should have bought afterwards to help their health. It happens all the time. And then on that note too, don't be one of these people that hypes up a competition for 6 freaking months on Instagram and tells everyone how they're going to win and how they're so giving 110% every day and sacrificing this and that. And then they do the competition and freaking lose. And then the next day, bodybuilding is so stupid. It's bad for your health. It's bad for Don't be an idiot. You knew it was bad for your health in the first place. And if you didn't, then you're a freaking idiot and that's on you. So stop getting mad just because you lost a competition. Like, why would you do that? Why do the competition and say you're giving 110%? I bet it'd be different if you won, wouldn't it? If you won, oh, you love bodybuilding. You're so thankful and grateful and it changed your life and you want to inspire other women around the world. Yeah, let's see what happens when you lose. That'll tell me how your character is when you lose a competition, because people, the way they act after they lose tells me whether or not I would want to coach them. I'll just be honest with you. So after your competition, hold yourself to a higher regard, okay? Don't be one of these people that backpedals and starts talking crap just because you lost. Insanely annoying. And I promise you, the people that have competed multiple times for years, that have trained for years, they will spot you out in a second, and I will talk crap about you to everyone I know on a daily basis until you stop posting that bullcrap. I promise you. And frankly, you have zero respect for me if you're going to talk shit just because you lost. Sorry, but that's like a huge pet peeve for me and a lot of other people. But back to the slides. Educate yourself as much as you can on the drugs constantly, all the time. And really question people on the advice they're giving you with this education, because sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they're right. And then lastly, for every competition, you need to set a line in the sand of what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do. With your coach, you need to ask him or her, what is the most you feel like I might have to do as far as drugs? And tell them if you're not comfortable with it. Tell them where you're comfortable with it and where you're not. And you need to draw that line in the sand, because once you cross that line, I've seen a lot of times with people that cross it, then it's wide open. They'll do whatever they can, then their health deteriorates even quicker. So set a line in the sand every competition, okay? All right, and then the last point with this, and this is probably the most important. Now, if you're single, this probably doesn't really apply to you, but you need to discuss anything that has to do with drugs with your significant other. Because if you start lying to your significant other over something as silly as a bodybuilding competition, I promise you, you will regret it. And there's tons and tons of bodybuilders on social media that won't tell you this, but they lied to their significant other. And now I'll just straight up tell you they're divorced, or they had infidelity, and it was 100% their fault because they started lying right from the beginning. And I hate to say it like that, but it's the truth and you need to hear it. If your significant other doesn't support you, then you need to reevaluate this entire idea of competing. I'm not telling you whether you should or shouldn't compete if they don't support you, but you do need to reevaluate it and just go over it one more time with them and see if they actually understand what you're trying to do. And then the other thing you need to tell yourself is, if they don't support you, why don't they support you? I mean, is it because they care about you? Maybe there's something you're missing, or maybe there's something about you that, like, maybe you're competing for the wrong reasons. I see that a lot as people, well, my significant other doesn't support me for this. And it's like, why? And it's like, well, they don't understand why I'm competing. Well, maybe you should tell them why you're competing. And if that why isn't good enough for them, then why is that why good enough for you? Because I'm telling, if you tell your significant other you just want to compete and take drugs and all this stuff because you want to try to get famous on Instagram, they're probably not going to support you. I mean, would you support someone for that? I probably wouldn't, in all honesty. But if you're telling them you're competitive and it's something that you love, like whether you win or lose, you want to do it, I bet they would probably support you. That's just what I think. And you need to tell them the truth about all of this from day one. Do not sugarcoat it and do not lie. And what I mean, and I'm not just talking about the drugs. I'm talking about, don't tell them you're going to the gym for an hour and then you're gone to the gym for 2.5 hours. Who would like that? No one would like that, whether there's someone that goes to the gym with you or not. And don't sugarcoat it about the food either, because if you go on a date with your significant other and then you're in there ordering this weird stuff or just not eating at all, no one wants to go on a date and the person you're on a date with doesn't even eat. Like, nobody likes that. Like, let's be real. Like, come on. So you need to tell them the truth from day one about what they are going to expect, because this is a sacrifice on them as well. It's a big sacrifice, and it's not fun for them. It's not. So don't think that it's fun for them just because you're getting ripped and you look good naked. Like, they're sacrificing a lot too just to be in this. And if you're going to succeed, you need them. I promise you, you need them. Be honest with them. And like I've said multiple times in this whole video, you need to be honest with yourself. Okay. And if you've done all this, there's one last question you got to ask yourself, which is what I started off with. That is, do you want it? Can you actually say, I want this, and it doesn't set off alarms in your head? It doesn't sound weird, and you don't feel like there's a little lack of confidence or like it's a question. You need to say, yeah, I want this. I want to sacrifice, and I want to feel the pain and suffering and see if I can do it. I want it. And if you do want it, then dude, do it, man. Do it. So tell me if this video helped you guys, and tell me if there's something I missed, because there's tons of stuff you need to take into account of whether or not you should compete. If there's something I missed, put it in the comments for other people to see. And thank you for watching.